Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar. Looks like people are still coming in, so we'll give another minute or so before we get started. Okay, I think we can probably get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for OCAP's October webinar. Today, we're excited to host a panel on coastal adaptation titled Waves of Change, Coastal Adaptation and Innovative Community Engagement in Southern California. We're joined today by Makana Nova of OC Parks, Jamie Timberlake of the City of Oceanside, and Todd Murrah of the City of Encinitas. Before we get started, I do want to give a heads up that this webinar and others we've held this past fall are available online. So if you're interested in rewatching any of the webinars or even sharing them with folks that couldn't attend, please visit the OCAPA resources webpage at oc-apa.org/resources. There you can view the recordings, the slide PDFs, and even event ID information for logging CM credits. Also, you can stay in the loop on upcoming virtual and in-person events by signing up for our email list at ocap.org or on Instagram at APA_orange_section. So our first presenter today is Makana Nova. Makana serves as the Coastal Resource Manager for OC Parks, now part of the County of Orange. In her role, she has facilitated permitted coastal projects and grants for the beneficial stand reuse at Capistrano Doheny State Beach, the upcoming Nature-Based Shoreline Project in Capistrano Beach, and more. Our second presenter is Jamie Timberlake. Jamie is a Coastal Zone Administrator for the City of Oceanside. As the first coastal zone administrator for the city, she manages the city's opportunistic beach fill program, San Diego County Shoreline Mitigation Study, and curated the Re-Beach Oceanside project. And our third presenter is Todd Murrah. Todd serves as a coastal zone program administrator for the city of Encinitas. There he manages the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers San Diego project, where 340,000 cubic yards of dredge sediment were placed over a heavily eroded coastline. Additionally, he manages the Cardiff State Beach Living Shoreline Project for the city, which restored a historic dune system on top of a buried engineered rock revetment. Just as a quick side note that we've set aside time at the very end for questions. You can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to enter your questions anytime. And at the end, we'll have a chance to go through and have our panelists answer each one. So you can see on the screen here, the Q&A button is the bottom of your screen. And with that, I will hand it off to Makana to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Makana Nova. I'm the Coastal Resource Manager for Orange County Parks under the County of Orange. So I'm here today to highlight our coastal resiliency efforts at Capistrano Beach Park and Doheny State Beach. So first, let me give you a little bit of an overview of the project area that we're talking about. So the nature-based shoreline at Capo and Doheny is essentially a living shoreline that's envisioned for this area. So here's the vicinity map. This is in what's known as Capistrano Shores within the city of Dana Point. The project area is highlighted. You can see Capistrano Beach is here at the south end of the map here. It's managed by Orange County Parks. And then the adjacent beach to the north is Doheny State Beach, and that's managed by California State Parks. So this is a joint project between the two agencies. And there's also, I wanted to highlight the San Juan Creek outlet that comes through here. So what does come through the watershed is outletted and comes down coast through this area. And so finally in blue, here is the project area. It's a 1,150 linear foot stretch of beach where this nature-based shoreline project is envisioned. And the red shows the property line. So let me take you on a little Wayback Machine for a moment. Here is a view of Capistrano Beach from back in 2016. You can see there's a lovely boardwalk, there's a basketball court, there's a restroom in the background there. And then in the winter of 2018, that all changed for this area. You can see the boardwalk was lost, the basketball court was damaged, and ultimately all of these structures were removed and we lost a portion of the parking lot that appears just behind the basketball court there. So pretty dramatic change in that storm season of 2018. That followed a series of emergency coastal development permits to put in sandbags and sand cubes to help hold the line, if you will, for coastal erosion in this area. But we know that we needed a longer term plan. So here's another overhead view of the damage from 2018. And then here is the Nature-Based Shoreline Project area and what the erosion looked like back in, this is about 2021, 2022. You can see that there were some really beloved palm trees that have been lost in this area. The amount of erosion that has occurred in this area. This is looking southward in that area where we lost some parking. And then we also have storm drain facilities that were exposed due to this erosion. So there's a lot of critical infrastructure through this area. I was just highlighting some of the storm drain facilities. You can see the parking lot in the aerial here. The main entrance comes down through Palisades Drive into Capistrano Beach. There is a pedestrian and bicycle path that is very well utilized that follows through this area down north into Doheny State Beach. And then we have the rail line, the Lausanne rail line, and then Coast Highway behind it. So if this coastal erosion continues at its current rate, we stand to lose a lot of very critical infrastructure in this area. So knowing that we need to look for a longer term plan, longer term solution, OC Parks embarked upon the Capistrano Beach Master Plan in late 2019 into early 2020. And this process kind of got put on hold due to COVID. So the outreach process was initiated, and luckily we were able to obtain a lot of community input during that time frame. You can see that there's this word frequency of responses in looking for solutions for this area. I want to highlight this third section of, we really got a mixed bag of responses of what they want to see for this area, but hybrid is a big piece of that. Beach nourishment and protecting the critical infrastructure that was there is important as well. So ultimately, we started putting together this nature-based shoreline project and going forward with California Coastal Commission for a coastal development permit. So I wanted to note real quickly on the master plan as well that process, while it was put on hold in 2020, it is envisioned to be completed by November of 2029. So the coastal development permit does lock us into place into completing that process and revisiting that. So we have the input of the community. We're moving forward with this nature-based shoreline in the interim. And so here's a quick look at what that pilot project looks like. It consists of a cobble berm covered by a living dune system. As I mentioned before, it's just under 1,200 linear foot length with that split jurisdiction. And move on real quickly. There's that look at the property line. So here's a visual simulation. This is again those photos from 2022-ish, before the coastal development permit was approved. And here's the visual simulation with that cobble berm, importing just about 37,000 cubic yards of cobble, and then approximately 100,000 cubic yards of sand planted with a native dune system here. So serves to significantly change the view and erosion impacts to this area. Here's what it looked like then. I'll flip through quickly the cobble berm and the visual simulation for the future. You can see this is the existing bike path, and that would continue in its current location. And here's the last view taken from Coast Highway across the OCTA Lausanne Rail Corridor. And you can see the cobble berm and then the dune system behind it. So it maintains a natural type of view system from these critical viewpoints. And so a number of technical studies were embarked as part of the coastal development permit process. Coastal shoreline trends, looking at the transport of sand down coast and up coast, has been an important piece of looking at whether this is the right location for the nature-based shoreline. Thinking back to the aerial view, we have a parking area and the beach is so eroded there where it was once 100-foot wide. There's almost nothing, no width left at that point. The waves do crash right on shore at that point. In the interim, we do have riprap in place in that location. So it wasn't really a right place for the nature-based shoreline that was studied at length. A number of alternative locations were looked at. Ultimately, the nature-based shoreline was envisioned further down coast where there is some width still, where it could be combined with the California State Parks, Doheny State Beach area to create a significant enough linear link to serve as an appropriate pilot project. We've gone through sea level rise, wave uprush studies, and we now have consultant GHD on board preparing 65% and 100% design plans by December of 2026. So we are still in the process of completing all of these technical studies. We're going through CEQA right now, preparing what looks like a mitigated native declaration at this time. And we have the coastal development permit in place, but are still pursuing State Lands Commission lease, as well as Army Corps and Water Quality Control Board. We're seeking a nationwide permit 54 for living shorelines approval for that. So those are all in process. And meanwhile, let's talk about funding. So this project is anticipated to be total about a $20 million project. Right now, we're undergoing phase one, that's final design permitting, and that is fully grant funded. We're very happy to say we have a FEMA BRIC grant still funded through this phase one process because it had already been initiated before the BRIC program was canceled early in January this year. And then we also have, for our state and local match, we have SB1 funding through the Ocean Protection Council through the state. For $220,000, and a component of that includes voluntary tribal engagement for $38,000. So we're very excited to have those grants in place. However, we're still continuing to seek funding for that construction phase. We were awarded a FEMA BRIC grant for construction, but if you've been following the news, that BRIC program was canceled in January of this year. So waiting to see how that plays out in the end, but we're exploring all avenues for construction funding at this point. So in the interim, you've seen some of the photos of a lot of the damage that has occurred at Capistrano and Doheny State Beach. We have been pursuing beneficial sand reuse projects over 2023 and 2024. In 2023, we placed 45,000 cubic yards at both beaches, and that really helped the interim condition. We went through Hurricane Hillary shortly after some of that sand was placed. And this sand has been beneficial not only to this beach area, but also as it enters the nearshore system, it has flowed down coast toward the private communities of Capistrano Bay District. We worked in conjunction with UC Irvine, who have studied via drone monitoring and satellite how that sand has moved through the system. It's actually created somewhat of a berm or a shoal off of Capistrano Bay District. So these beneficial sand reuse projects have been helpful in the interim to hold the line, if you will. And then in 2024, we did another nourishment of 20,000 cubic yards at Capistrano Beach. I think I've talked a little bit about the process already. We're undergoing outreach in November. So that's our next big step. We have a community meeting planned for November 13th in 2025. And we're anticipating tribal outreach as part of that grant that we received through SB1 and OPC in spring of 2026. And here's a little bit more about that outreach process. We have our meeting. It's an in-person meeting scheduled for the Orange County Sailing and Event Center at 6:00 p.m. on November 13th. If you're into this kind of thing, come on down, check it out if you're in the community. We also have the QR code here. If you're interested in finding out more, we have a web page on the Orange County Parks website. And I think that's it for me for now. Here's my information if you're interested in learning more. Thank you for listening today, and we're excited to embark on this effort for Orange County. And from here, I will pass it through to Jamie Timberlake to talk about the Beach project in Oceanside. Take it away, Jamie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I have not seen that whole presentation yet, so I'm super excited. I'm an OC native, though I now live in San Diego County. So my name is Jamie Timberlake. I'm the Coastal Zone Administrator for City of Oceanside, and I'm here today to present on the Beach Oceanside Pilot Sand Retention and Sand Nourishment Project, which is the city's coastal resilience and sea level rise adaptation project that aims to lessen our beach erosion and then adapt our coastline to future sea levels. I appreciate the opportunity to present today. I am not a planner by nature, but I am learning that on the fly as we implement projects, which is a little bit different in the order of operations. But since we're talking projects today, this project fits in nicely with the overall discussion. So this is a pilot project, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. It's intended to inform additional areas in Oceanside, but also in the region. So Oceanside, really this Beach Oceanside initiative, it stemmed from a lot of erosion, both being visually observed and scientifically. We've been studying it for a long time and seeing this beach loss across our coastline. It also this initiative that we're talking about today, it also came from community encouragement to address this significant beach loss that we've been having, and then from policy initiatives guided by the Coastal Commission that aim to address vulnerable low-lying areas and future sea level rise, which I feel all of you are familiar with. So from all these inputs, the city determined that the first step to address our beach loss issues was to thoroughly understand our system. And so we launched a feasibility study that would identify immediate deficiencies in coastal management that we could readily address, such as those short-term nourishment projects that Makana was discussing. And then, determine a suite of solutions that could help preserve our beaches for a longer term. And longer term is open to interpretation, but in the context of Oceanside's project, long term is 20 to 30 years. So the feasibility study that we launched in 2020, it concluded that a high quality source of sand should be identified for Oceanside and a beach nourishment program developed that would provide us with a more consistent sediment supply to the coastline. Similar to Orange County, we have a lack of sediment moving into the system. And then the feasibility study also recognized that Oceanside has a difficult time hanging on to sand. And so whatever nourishment program we developed, we needed to couple it with a sand retention mechanism that could assist in retaining any of those efforts, any of that sand nourishment that we place on the beach. Oceanside is not alone in that we have a lack of sediment supply and that we have a hard time hanging on to sand. But we are unique in that we have basically no features on our coastline. It's very straight. There's no natural retention mechanisms. There's no reefs, no coves, no pocket beaches. And then there's also no artificial retention mechanisms that are south of the pier. So the majority of our coastline doesn't have any groins or anything that is unnatural to retain the sand. So anytime we place sand in Oceanside, it leaves our shoreline rather rapidly. So after the feasibility study came up with these high-level conclusions, the city decided to pursue the recommendations, and we went from a feasibility study into the phase 2 retention pilot project that we're discussing today. And overall, the intent of the pilot project is to design, permit, and implement a pilot sand retention system that we could implement throughout the region or throughout other areas in Oceanside once we learn how it's working. So to find that new type of sediment retention, that new type of coastal management tool, the city held an international design competition in the summer of 2023, which gave us the opportunity to see what kinds of sand retention mechanisms were being used throughout the world that we could borrow from areas that were already experiencing coastal erosion. So the 8-month-long final design competition hosted 3 competitive teams coming from New York City, from the Netherlands, and from Australia. And then these final competitors were given the initial design parameters for competition, which were in alignment with that 2020 feasibility study. And so the overall objective of the design competition was to have these competitors design a sand retention feature that would restore and maintain sand along the coast while increasing the efficiency of any and all sand nourishment efforts that the city, the region, or the federal government may carry forward. That's a big distinction, because what we don't want to do is trap sand in Oceanside. We want to hold on to it a little bit longer, but we understand that sediment needs to move through the system. You can't stay in one spot. That won't benefit anyone. So the idea is to hang on to some of the efforts, but not to keep it all in one spot. So of these 3 designs that were brought forward, the winning concept design that Oceanside is now planning for its shoreline is the International Coastal Management, or ICM's, Living Speed Bumps design, which mimics an innovative implemented reef system on the Gold Coast of Australia. And we now kind of just keep calling this design the Re-Beach Oceanside project. So community involvement, very important, just like Makana was talking about. And throughout the design competition, we did several public workshops that were heavily attended by the community. And each time we had a design round, the public was able to come to one of these workshops and then fully vet the design to date and give their input as to what they liked and what they didn't like about the design. And so through each of the design rounds, we got closer and closer to getting what the community wanted to see. And actually, the designs kept kind of merging as well. They kept getting closer and closer to one another. So we had to kind of orchestrate how the design competition was happening. And so I'm going to show you a video in the next slide, which is kind of just shows like how much interest the public had in this process. It also showcases how much outreach has helped us, because the next video is done by the BBC. So the BBC took an interest in Oceanside's project and came to Oceanside, did interviews. I was very reluctant to do this, but did it anyway for the good of the project. And so I'll let that intro sit with itself. And here's the video.
The beaches along this coast are the lifeblood of our community. And seeing the beaches no longer here is a significant emotional issue. My family has been here since 1962, and the beach is part of our soul. I spent 30 years in the Navy, and coming back after being gone, found the beaches of my childhood memories no longer here. We need to do something to restore that. How's the measurement going today? So I joined Save Oceanside Sand. Save Oceanside Sand started out as a very small group of locals concerned about the loss of our beaches and want to do something to restore it. In our research and talking to other local experts and coastal scientists, we lose sand faster than it's replenished. Sand comes and goes in cycles. Our beach sand would normally get replenished from our rivers, which are dammed, which is disrupted by the harbor complex, and then by decomposition of the shores. But those sources don't really exist anymore. So yeah, Oceanside, we have to do something to offset that loss of sand. And the city got an initial solution. Well, we'll catch up with you guys later then.
The beaches are kind of like my wilderness. Like, it's where I like to go and just regroup, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Oceanside's beaches, they mean a lot to me. As the Coastal Zone Administrator for the City of Oceanside, I want to help restore Oceanside's beaches. Bob is a very dedicated human being. He was very passionate. There was a draft proposal to do 4 pilot groins as a pilot project that would be placed south of the pier.
That retention solution can work.
They're kind of a traditional mechanism of retaining sand worldwide. The project team felt like that would work.
And the surf is always good there.
Man-made retention systems such as groins have been effectively used up and down the California coast, and they can be cost-effective.
I work for Surfrider Foundation as our San Diego County Policy Manager. Surfrider's job is to stick up for all of our beaches, countywide. So very personal to me because I love the beach and I want to protect the thing that I love and that so many people love. When I heard about groins as a solution, I was definitely shocked. In my opinion, groins would be the worst thing for saving our beaches. It's going to trap sand in one place so it helps this beach, but it can totally starve the beach on the other side. It basically helps one place, but sucks for everyone else. If more groins were built in Oceanside, people in South Oceanside and further south might lose their beaches. A lot of people were mad about that. Surfrider opposed it, and also the community opposed it.
It was extremely frustrating when our community opposed the initial proposed solution. Groins are one solution. They can be designed to work, but that's not what this community wants. But it caused us to double down, and we said, okay, well, what else can we do?
We had to come up with a new solution. I and the project team started thinking about how could we get more innovative. I knew that there were a myriad of options that we could try out, but none of us really had exactly what we could do in mind. I want to bring forward a new solution.
Kind of in a place and you're grappling with a problem, sometimes you can get really stuck.
And then, we worked with RCC, Resilient Cities Catalyst from New York. They had been parts of design competitions in the past.
Design competitions create this kind of space for a different conversation that's been able to be possible.
So the idea of a design competition became something that we started thinking about, but we had no idea what was going to come out of it.
So I got a call from Jamie that basically the city wanted to launch into this big international design competition for a sand replenishment and retention project. 3 big design firms trying to find a solution. Jamie asked me to be a judge in the competition. I didn't want to do it. I was very skeptical.
We invited everyone in who was against the project. We wanted to let them know that we heard them. We wanted to come to a solution that worked for everyone.
Although it made me uncomfortable, I knew I needed to be in the room and that I could be more impactful by being part of the process and not just sitting on the sidelines.
Competition started, and we brought the community in, and everybody's voice was heard about what their concerns were.
It's crazy the opposition to the project.
So through the competition, which lasted a year and consisted of several special events where the public could provide feedback, 3 unique proposals emerged. There was lots of discussion. The residents' input changed the design directly, and that the community came with us along the whole way. So I think they felt vested in the outcome.
One of the design really addressed what the community was looking for.
This design just really spoke, I think, the language of Oceanside, of just, hey, let's just keep it a natural beach, as natural as possible with using these structures.
This design concept that comprised of 3 different structures, 2 structures on the back beach called artificial headlands, and then offshore between the 2 headlands will be a large artificial reef submerged. What we hope that does is it stops those large waves from coming directly hitting our shoreline and taking all the sand. It could provide the city and the region with a new coastal management tool that'll allow us to retain some sand on our beaches.
We thought it was a fantastic solution for Oceanside. We were all sitting there in the council chambers, and then it went to the vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were pretty excited. I mean, it was a standing ovation at the City Hall, which I've never seen before. It was a significant milestone in this whole journey. It was one of the best nights we had up there, for sure.
I think I felt proud and relieved, like we had worked our tails off and we got it across the finish line. And then it was like, let's do this, keep going, go, go, go. We got a lot of work to do now.
My focus remains on ensuring the project relies on scientific evidence, that it aligns with future-oriented coastal adaptation for sea level rise. I'm just glad that now we're all working together.
It goes to show what can be achieved by being inclusive, being transparent, and working together.
Fun times, right? It's pretty crazy that the BBC was here doing all that work, but we're super grateful to our partners for all that, because it has helped kind of keep the project alive. Because, like I said, kind of at the end of it, we are now we're doing a lot of the actual work to get this project across the finish line, the real finish line, which is get it implemented. And so currently we're designing the effort. Overall, like you heard in the video, the project entails it entails 2 headlands, one at Tyson Street Park, one at Wisconsin, onshore nourishment right along the beach, and then nearshore nourishment in the nearshore area, and then an artificial reef that is pretty large. It's going to be about 10 acres, but it will be a reef. It will be a submerged artificial reef that waves will break around and over and hopefully improve surf conditions in the area. And then, of course, we got to find that sand source. And so what one of the great things about our coastline in Oceanside is that we do have some natural sand that was good quality beach sand that's directly off our coast that we were able to find, locate, and identify and get approved for taking sand from to supplement this project. And so, yeah, the next steps, well, there's just a tidbit of some of the outreach that we've been doing since 2021. It's been extensive and continual. But next steps are really just to continue doing this engineering and design. We're in final design right now, really looking at the reef shape and how the waves break around it. This slide came out a little funky, but we're also doing this very extensive baseline monitoring program, which is funded by the California Coastal Commission. They will really want to see and make sure that our pilot project is well understood, especially since we are considering it a pilot project, and others like San Clemente are watching and seeing how it transforms, seeing if this particular design can be utilized in other areas. And so monitoring it and making sure that it's implemented correctly, and that the kind of repiloting and learning from the effort here, it's really important to the Coastal Commission. So they have given us some funds to augment that baseline monitoring program. We've been doing continual outreach. We will continue to do outreach throughout this entire effort. And actually starting this week, we're starting our scoping meeting for our CEQA and NEPA document and our environmental compliance. And then the fun part, trying to get all the funds together to fund this project. It's about $55 million at this point. So not something that the city can shoulder on its own exactly. So we're looking for different grants from State Coast Conservancy, from Prop 4, from Ocean Protection Council, from Department of Parks and Recreation. We haven't really been looking at federal grants these days, but we have our eye on them once we start getting some clarity on that situation. And then, yeah, diving into how we can locally fund the project as well. So I will sit back and take some questions if you'd like. You can send them into the Q&A. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to kick it over to Todd with the City of Encinitas. We'll just keep going down the coast.
Sounds good, Jamie. Thanks for the update there on Beach. That was great. Yeah, my name is Todd Moran, the Coastal Administrator for the City of Encinitas. I'm going to give a brief overview on the Cardiff State Beach Living Shoreline Project and other projects as it relates to actual built projects that have experienced varying degrees of coastal erosion and storm damage impacts. So the Cardiff State Beach Living Shoreline, if you're not familiar with it, is located at the south end of Encinitas. It's on Coast Highway. You can see the city of Solana Beach is there to the south. We've got San Alejo Lagoon, which is a marine protected area there to the east, and then the Pacific Ocean there to the west. It's just south of the Chart House restaurant, if you're kind of familiar with that area. During last year's king tides and high surf winter seasons, the entrance to the Cardiff State Beach parking lot north of Pacific Coast Grill and north of the Living Shoreline Project was undermined and damaged, which caused failure of the pavement and ultimately closure of the parking lot. As you can kind of see here in the photos. The same type of damage and intensity of frequent peak winter storm events damaged Coast Highway, where the Living Shoreline is, and that's kind of what triggered the concept of doing a pilot project back in 2016 to do the Cardiff Living Shoreline itself. So it's been around essentially now for about 7 years. Additionally, with storm surge and significant high tides affecting the tidal prism comes, sand entering the lagoon. And so you can see there on the top left, this is the inlet to the San Alejo Lagoon, essentially, plugged up with sand from those king tides and high surf events. In turn, we basically use this area and reuse it for sand nourishment along the beaches within this proximity, including rebuilding the living shoreline itself. And so you can see, the flood condition, and then the photo there on the top right is actually, significant rainfall pushing out the sediment back into the ocean. And the bottom photo is essentially the optimal situation, getting a high and low tide condition, flushing the lagoon with oxygen and salt water. The photos on the left show the Cardiff State Beach Living Shoreline, kind of how that reach of beach, which is about 2,900 linear feet, had existed like this for more than 70 years. So you can kind of see the riprap in the photo there, the cobble, not engineered or organized in any way. The bottom left photo shows kind of the array of parking, just kind of off the shoulder there in the dirt. Many times when the surf's good, it gets double stacked and you kind of get locked in there, or used to get locked in there and couldn't get out. Additionally, the lifeguard access way was kind of more of the centralized area and potentially would be blocked, which created issues if there was an incident on the beach to get somebody out and safely to the hospital. The picture on the right actually shows the finalized condition, so you can kind of see the difference. And this was taken after 2018. You can see the sand dune kind of along the linear limits there, along adjacent to Coast Highway. We added a trail system, a DG trail. Essentially, it's ADA compliant. It's got a 10% aggregate of concrete for stabilization. Native dune vegetation along the dune, utilizing native plants, verbena, whatnot, that actually root structures go, 15 to 20 feet down within the engineered revetment and lock in the sand itself. And then also, just clear pedestrian and lifeguard access. You can see down at the bottom, we added the Moby mat and pretty much a 24-foot wide path to the area to clearly keep that access open for the life safety. So many visitors who frequent this area aren't aware of the engineering that went into the design. It's really an engineered dune system with a living element on the surface. To protect Coast Highway from undermining and flooding, a buried rock revetment was designed and installed into the project as a last line of defense. Only minor exposure of the revetment was seen this last year in the La Nina year that we had last year. And the trapezoid design you can kind of see there with the reconfigured cobble is designed like a foam pit. It essentially takes the wave energy coming from the west side and it dissipates it as it hits the dune going through it towards the east. Essentially, we did geotech fabric as for permeability to keep the water on the west side towards the ocean, and then the revetment stacks about 18 to 24 inches above the crown of Coast Highway behind it for that protection. So basically, the dune has been installed for more than 6 years, and I think we've had no structural damage since it's been installed to Coast Highway or the infrastructure behind it. And this kind of shows it in performance. This is a king tide event. You could see, 3 to 6 foot swells coming in, and it's taking out essentially the front of the dune, which we refer to as the sacrificial toe of the dune. But you can see on the east side where Coast Highway is, some people, getting ready to surf or walk along that area are kind of unaffected by what's going on. So typically in January and February, the king tides, talking about a 7-foot high tide in depth, 6 to 8 foot swells, you see the inundation come right up to the toe of the dune. So it's essentially taking that sacrificial part away. The dune system originally was designed about 60 feet wide. So we see it fluctuate to, 60 to 30 feet in some sections, depending on the storm events. In February, generally coming around the cycle, you can see it's receded and there's escarpment happening there on the bluff, like a bluff edge, so to speak. And you can kind of see the damage of the fencing, some of the revetment and rock, cobble, toe exposed in that section. And then kind of as we head into spring, you can see the beach starting to level out again as sand starts to come back in. And the toe of the dune there, kind of in the right side of the photo, is more rounded and less severe as the sand starts to fill in. Additionally, access ways get damaged. So through the years of monitoring and managing this, we've kind of come up with different strategies. You get surface flows coming off the road in heavy storm events. You can see in that bottom left photo, that's surface runoff coming through the access way and finding the lowest point, eroding that. We sandbag certain portions to alleviate the storm surge and the impact, the direct force coming through those access ways, so it's not coming all the way to the roadway or the parking area. And then if it's completely damaged, we'll typically just shut down that access way. There are 6 access ways to the beach here until we can actually repair it. The key thing with this project is we have an operation agreement in place between the City of Encinitas, California State Parks, and the Nature Collective, who's basically the lagoon manager of the Santa Elena Lagoon. We also have funding source with the State Coastal Conservancy, and that basically allows access for us to maintain this thing in long term or in perpetuity essentially. The bottom left photo, you can see us excavating the inlet, basically pulling out the sediment that was plugging up the lagoon you saw in those previous photos. We stack it outside on the westerly edge there along the inlet. And then we utilize rock trucks. They can carry about 33 cubic yards of load If we have access on the beach, we'll do that. But many years, we haven't had access. We actually have to do traffic control plans and actually move them on the coast highway for a short distance and then back onto the beach. To reestablish the sacrificial part of the dune, essentially we kind of back in those loads you can see there with the rock truck just going right up against the toe. Obviously, we use high quality sand. It's essentially the sand that you saw off the beach getting pulled into the inlet. So we're kind of accomplishing two goals, bringing tidal flow into the lagoon and rebuilding the beach at the same time. Different equipment works better. We've kind of learned through time. This one shows kind of the hauling effort. That photo on the right, top right, was taken from the public access way. So you can just see how massive those trucks are moving down the line. And the bottom right, we used a D6 bulldozer this last time, and it just makes a huge difference on contouring. So it's something to think about as strategies and sculpting, but that one vehicle can do a lot more than an excavator or a front loader. This is just showing kind of the access ways, how we rebuild them, stacking piles in front of the access way before we contour it, and then filling in gaps here. Here's another surface erosion condition, kind of an existing condition that we're absorbing from Coast Highway and having to manage it. That boulder you can see, that's the revetment boulder that's underneath the sand. So while a large amount of sand dune erosion, occurs over the winter seasons, the engineered aspects of the revetment wall for the entire linear project site have remained in place at least over the last 6 to 7 years. The Living Shoreline Project continues to be a very effective coastal design solution against significant storm and weather events along the frontage. And this is largely due to the long-term maintenance and monitoring plan in place between the agencies involved, as well as having that consistent sand source at the San Elena Lagoon. So that's kind of a key component. You can't look at it as entitling this, building it one time. You need to think long-term on how to manage it long-term to keep it there and keep it effectively there. Another recent project constructed in central Encinitas was the San Diego County, California project, also known in the industry as a coastal storm damage reduction project. So segment 1 is located in the city of Encinitas, extends approximately a mile and a half or about 7,800 feet, and it was comprised of 340,000 cubic yards of material. Segment 2 is located in Solana Beach. That goes from Thai Beach Park to just north of the city of Del Mar limits, and that was about 700,000 cubic yards of sediment. The project was approved to the U.S. Congress last year and is a programmatic effort to proactive coastal resilience and bluff management, spanning 50 years through the year 2074. The project is essentially a coastal storm damage reduction project spanning 2 separate jurisdictions, with goals to reduce coastal storm damage to property infrastructure along the city of Encinitas and city of Solana Beach shorelines and along the bluff top, prior to any emergency action being requested or required. The project was designed to improve public safety by reducing the threat of bluff failures caused by undermining wave action against the bluff toe by creating a beach berm in front of the bluffs that's wide enough and tall enough to help dissipate wave energy and storm surge before it hits the bluff face. And lastly, the goal was to reduce the overall coastal erosion and shoreline narrowing in both study areas, which improves the overall recreation opportunities, for the public and tourism, shoreline habitat, and life and safety access throughout the shoreline there. Beach sand placement operations basically involved placing a pipeline or a subline through the surf zone to the beach in both Solana Beach and Encinitas. Due to the distance from placement area, we had to use what's called a hopper dredge, suction hopper dredge with pump ashore capability. Kind of see in the front of the bow, there's a compressor that hooks up to a buoy system. Essentially, it pushes the sand through a subline that we sink on the ocean floor through approved environmental corridors specifically to get the sand flowing onto the beach. And so our borrow sites were just off of Del Mar, kind of near the racetracks, about 2,500 feet offshore and beyond the depth of closure. And Moonlight Beach, which was Encinitas's receiver site, was about 6 miles north. So it took about a 1 hour trip for the boat to kind of go back and forth, excluding the pump out. And due to extensive erosion along the entire reach in Encinitas, the berm pad had to be adjusted from 13 feet above mean low water to 15 feet. This was essential to cover up all the cobble that you can see there in those photos from the recent winter storms of El Nino in 2023 and 2024. All the sand in this area had basically vanished, as you can see. Additionally, the build is adjacent to 80 to 120 foot coastal sandstone bluffs, so that are prone to sloughing and failure, creating a potential safety hazard with the heavy equipment rattling beneath them. The narrow design of the berm, which is approximately 50 feet in width, with a 40-foot taper, basically utilizing a 10-to-1 gradient going seaward, came about to help prevent the direct sensitive resources that are present directly offshore within the subtidal, subpertidal, and intertidal areas. Basically, the picture on the left, you can see Sunset Beach, which was kind of central in the project, the before and after conditions. So there really wasn't a beach there. Now you can see the bluff protection with the sand berm, keeping the ocean to the west. Let's see if this- Lagging. So pretty drastic change. And so there's extensive monitoring, both pre-construction monitoring and post-construction monitoring. So we're in our first year of construction, and we have about 2 years monitoring. So we're doing all sorts of monitoring long term, and we'll be presenting a lot of that as we come closer to that 2-year mark. So we're getting low on time. So SCOOP, I just wanted to cover this real quick. SCOOP, or the Sand Compatibility and Opportunistic Use Program, is part of a regional sediment management plan intended to streamline beach nourishment projects. The standardized permitting process facilitates the use of available sand from construction sites and other opportunistic sources. The program includes stringent environmental regulations to ensure that the sand sources are compatible with receiver sites. The timing and location of sand placement are also strictly controlled to reduce any negative impacts on coastal habitat and recreation. And just kind of generally speaking here, this is something that can be kind of leveraged in any coastal community or even outside, just on the outskirts of a coastal community. Basically, looking at a grading site here, we basically analyze the geotechnical reports on an inland or upland site, look at the phase 1, phase 2 environmental assessments, determining past uses with potential soil contamination and whatnot, cultural resources reports if there's any sensitivity, and then looking at the preliminary grading plans to determine the overall export quantities, cut and fill, and then haul route as far as where the material is going. And a good threshold kind of cost to benefit ratio is about 10,000 cubic yards. With 10,000 cubic yards, we essentially can rebuild that entire living shoreline that you saw. That's 2,900 linear feet of beach area. That's about 1,000 truck trips, 10 cubic yards per dump truck coming off the site. So it just kind of shows you the volume of what we're talking about. From that process, from there, we basically go through all the agencies. So we determine that, hey, this could be viable. Then we go through the Army Corps, we go through the Water Board, Coastal Commission, EPA, and the State Lands Commission for approval. we look at what's called a sampling analysis plan, or a SAP, to determine if we can match that to a beach location. And then there's a SAP-R, or results version. We do a project notification report, which is kind of like a standard public notification process on how we're going to go about doing it. And then after we place it, we do what's called a post-construction monitoring report. And then we monitor the effort. Same thing, monitoring, includes turbidity monitoring, dealing with the water clarity as it gets placed, surf monitoring, and kind of depending on the timing, biological monitoring, dealing with grunion, avian, bird monitoring, whatnot. So, as planners and land use professionals, you can condition projects in the discretionary permit to reuse this material with the city's limits, with consent from the owner. It's best to leverage policies from the city's general plan or climate action plan, citing the nexus between recycling the material and disposing in a landfill. If you're a coastal city with little to no development taking place, you could work with your neighboring jurisdictions to see if they would be willing to haul material to your shores. Basically, you're offering a developer a free location, of qualified sediment to deposit on your beach, and they save a lot of money, the hauling costs to the landfill. So that basically incentivizes the process. And then, sediment placement can either be beach placement against a bluff, or a roadway feature, as you saw in some of the presentations, or it can be an intertidal placement near the surf zone, which it'll naturally feather along the beach. Just depends on the needs. That concludes my presentation. I will turn it back to Michael for questions. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So looks like we have a few minutes to squeeze in a few questions. Looks like you guys have been busy typing answers during the presentations, which is great. So let's see, in terms of a few that are still outstanding. One of the questions SAG has is, have any agencies used this SCOUT, probably mispronouncing it, program for small sand deposits? And are there any incentives for projects providing the sand other than conditions of approval?
I didn't hear it exactly, but the SCOOP program, it depends. So, the way Encinitas is leveraging it now is within significant grading permit jobs. So things that are, like I said, 10,000 cubic yards or more. So the one I think you saw in the photo was actually 70,000 cubic yards, but we're only getting about 10,000 viable based on granule compatibility and chemical makeup, right? The previous use, taking off the top layer of the fill and taking that to the landfill, then actually using what would be quantified as sandstone to the beach. So I hope that answered the question. Jamie, I don't know if you have any additional comments on that.
Yeah, I can just add on. The SCOOP projects are super expensive and they're really hard to get them done. We are doing in Oceanside, we're doing one right now. We're doing a 2,000 cubic yards of material. That's about the lowest I would go in terms of bang for your buck. And that's because by and large, we know like the sediment just moves off the shoreline swiftly. And so we don't want to be spending too much money on these efforts. But if your developer is really incentivized, if they cannot find a landfill for the material to go to, or they can't find a construction site that needs fill, they will be incentivized to work with you on getting your project to the beach, or getting their sand to the beach. But they would have to be heavily incentivized. In Oceanside, we're just doing this project now, which is from the Front Wave Arena construction, and that was done 3 years ago. But we stockpiled the material, tested it heavily, submitted it to all the agencies for review and approval. And now what we're doing to kind of prolong the life of the 2,000 cubic yards is put it on the back beach only, so not in the intertidal at all. So it acts like a berm. So that might be just one other thing to think about, is like, where are you going to place it to prolong your investment?
Thanks, Jamie. And it looks like we have one more question for the group. This is a good one, actually. They're looking for strategies for getting large landowners to the table for the adaptation planning process, especially if they're being asked, if not forced, from activities or to relocate their uses.
I think that's a tough question. And I think, we've attempted to answer in the chat. I think it's been asked a couple different ways in the chat. I think of, I don't know, I don't know this exact project or its exact location. I think of projects like Banning Ranch, for example, where I think improved coordination with Coastal Commission staff and the developer landowner along the way really could have served to improve how that Banning Ranch project may have turned out. It ended up being denied. So this is where, the old adage, communicate early and often is comes to mind for me of like, you got to bring everyone in the door and start talking about it before you get too far down a path. And that's all I can offer today. It's not easy. And best of luck in your adventures, Stefan. Oh, I was going to add one more thing too on the questions about sand. I mean, Zach might know better than us for San Clemente. I know that they've done some really small nourishment projects with OCTA over in San Clemente, North Beach, where everything was placed above the mean high tide line just to avoid the need for Army Corps permitting. I think typically we wouldn't mobilize unless you have a larger sand volume, but in that case, there was a need to demonstrate the efforts being made by OCTA to place sand at that particular location to protect the rail line. So I wouldn't say that's typical, but I guess I've seen it in recent memory in the San Clemente jurisdiction. But usually we want to see something more before we go through the time and effort to place sand out there.
Yeah.
We are looking at, oh, we're over time, so I'll
Okay.
stop, but go ahead.
I was just going to add real quick. Also, the SCOOP program, we already approved locations on the beach. So the environmental review for placement is already established. So all we're really doing is taking infill sources, matching it, and qualifying it for those recipient locations that are already approved the process. So it's not as simple as just, taking a grading and moving it a location. We have a recipient site in mind. That's typically how it gets set up that way. It's already cleared all the agencies.
Paving the regulatory pathway to
Correct.
make those beneficial use happen.
Right.
And a lot of our projects in Orange County have been coordinated with Orange County Public Works. I just wanted to give them a quick shout out for their basin and flood control maintenance and their contributions to our beaches as well. So thanks.
Awesome. So we are getting to the end of our hour. So definitely wanted to thank Makana, Jamie, and Todd for sharing their knowledge and experience with us today. Did want to make sure that folks know that the webinar recording and the slides will be available on our website at ocapa.org/resources. And this webinar does qualify for one sustainability and resilience CM credit with the event ID up on the screen, 9320619. So I'll leave that up for a bit. And with that, I want to thank our presenters and everyone for spending your lunch hour with us, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.